What do I need to do to get this illegally squared up?
Yes.
Well, open the meeting and then you can read that remote participation piece, Dan. if you
All
want.
right, sounds good. You got us rolling?
I do.
All right, good evening, everybody. This is Dan Anderson, Chairman of the Dudley Town Planning Board, opening our meeting April 8th, 2020 at roughly 7 o'clock. I'm going to do a quick roll call of our members first of all. If we can just start, Richard, are you on? Richard Clark? Okay, Richard Clark is not on. Steve,
Hey, Dan, I see Richard, but I guess he can't hear you.
I don't think he connected the audio. He probably had the same problem when I first got on. There's a lower left-hand corner. It said connect with computer audio, and until I hit that,
all right, I've got his
hear.
picture on the screen. Richard, can you hear us? Are you present, Richard?
I'll give him a
Looks
call,
like-
Dan.
All right.
I had the same thing that when I first came on.
Steve, are you on?
Yes, sir.
All right. Bill LePage, you're on?
Yes, sir.
Lou Perrin.
Present.
All right. Carol Savard, you're on? Carol, can you? All right. Carol's getting nothing here. And,
Yeah, I'm here.
go, Carrie, there you are. And Bill Scanlon, our acting town planner, is also on. So we're just waiting for confirmation for member Richard Clark to see if he's on at all. We do have a quorum.
I see a video of him, and I just texted that we can't hear him. So hopefully he'll see my chat.
Excellent. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, the Dudley Planning Board will conduct its public meetings and hearings via remote participation. In-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. The board encourages all members of the public to view and/or participate in the meeting through a personal computer or smartphone. The town of Dudley has chosen to use
Richard, can you
for this purpose.
unmute your?
Please download the program to the
picture?
device of your choosing.
I think there's a 3-dot thing on the screen. I think you can unmute that so you can hear us and speak.
Okay, so I do have a
Yes.
roll of the members
Yes.
and our staff. I'll get to the anticipated speakers on the agenda as
Okay, I'll leave you on then.
on line item. That's okay with everybody? All right, so I'm going to open the public hearing at 7 o'clock for the proposed zoning amendment to the mill conversion overlay district. Our purpose is to amend section or paragraph 3.10 or 10.05 permitted uses to specifically allow residential or multifamily residential uses and a combination of other allowable uses. And 2, to amend section 3 or paragraph 3.0.07L standards to provide a process to waive the requirement that 10% of the proposed dwelling units be restricted to low and moderate income households. And 3, to amend 3.10 or 10.10 action by the planning board to require the planning board to act on a special permit application within 90 days of the close of the public hearing. Bill, I believe we have some speakers on that are waiting to talk to us. Public hearing has been opened.
Yes, Carolyn, we thought maybe you could start us off if you like.
Sure, I'd love to.
Hello.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
I can, yes.
Excellent. So good evening, members of the board.
I can't
and-
really hear anyone. Hello?
Who was that?
Richard.
That sounds like
Ah.
Richard Clark.
Carol, I can see your picture, but why can't I connect on the iPad? Anybody any ideas?
Is he muted perhaps? Because we can hear him.
Bill, I've got no volume here.
I've got you on my phone, Richard. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can barely hear you. Is everyone else in?
Yes.
I can hear and see everybody.
All right, I am trying to get in on the iPad, but it just keeps waiting. I don't know what the problem is with that. And what I'm looking at now says Town of Dudley, and there's this thing going around and around and around. It started screen sharing, and I have no idea how I can get my volume louder than it is.
If you're on an iPad, there should be two buttons on the right side. One's volume up and one's volume down, usually.
Volume is all the way up on the iPad, but all I'm getting is my own image and something that says waiting. I hit join with video and nothing happens. Join without video, nothing changes. All right, I guess I'm back to using the phone again, which I can't hear anyone on.
Oh, Richard, can you hear me?
Just barely.
Okay, try, did you click on join with audio and join with video?
Getting help here. Very good.
Why?
Got it. Yeah, the volume was never a problem before. Thanks.
I have to hold this thing up to my ear. I'm assuming no one can see me.
Yes, we can see you.
You can.
Yes.
Well, I apologize for my appearance then anyway. Maybe I should work on the sign language part of this. I've maxed out as far as the volume is concerned. So I guess if we're all here, we're going to start.
We've already started. We're waiting now for the open meeting to start for the public hearing. I think Carolyn wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully you can all hear me. So just for the record, I'm Carolyn Murray from KP Law, and we serve as town council to the town of Dudley. And I've been working with your acting town planner and your town administrator and members of the Board of Selectmen to develop this zoning amendment that's before you this evening. So why don't I just give you a little bit of background just for some context. This pertains mostly to, this is a request to amend the mill conversion overlay zoning bylaw. And specifically, it is seeking amendments that would hopefully facilitate a proposed redevelopment of the Stevens Mills located at Ardlock Place and Mill Street. As you know, this site is actually located in the Industrial 43 zoning district, as well as the Mill Conversion Overlay District. According to your use table, an apartment building is not a use allowed in the Industrial 43 zoning district, but it would be allowed in the Mill Conversion Overlay District, but only if that residential use is in conjunction with a non-residential use. As a mill conversion project is currently defined, under your zoning bylaw, the conversion has to consist of multifamily dwellings and or some combination of appropriate non-residential uses. The section 3-10-5 also specifies what types of non-residential uses could be used in conjunction with a residential use at the mill conversion project. And it lists things such as a restaurant or a retail office space, museum, educational, charitable uses, indoor recreational uses. And then in addition, as was alluded to during the reading of the legal ad, a mill conversion project that consists of a residential component is required right now under the bylaw to have a minimum of 10% of the residential units be designated as affordable, as meaning affordable for purposes of qualifying on the town's subsidized housing inventory as being eligible to households of low and moderate income residents. And then there's another component that addresses right now, section 3.10.10, requires the planning board to act on an application within 90 days of submittal of a completed application, which, as we were reviewing this bylaw, is actually not consistent with state law. So we thought this was an opportunity to address that. So just for purposes of why this is before you this evening, my understanding is that the town has had several different proposals or expressions of interest over the years to develop or redevelop the mills, but none have actually come to fruition. The town has more recently been contacted by a proposed developer that would seek to develop this Stevens Mill site to convert the mill into 164 residential units, all at market rate, so with no 10% affordability component and with no specified commercial component. I say that with a little bit of a footnote because there certainly have been some discussions about there being a possibility of a commercial component in the form of maybe some type of a food service, restaurant, a coffee shop, something like that, but nothing specific has been presented as part of the proposal to the Board of Selectmen. So as we know, a strictly residential development of the mills with no affordability component is not something that's currently allowed under your mill conversion overlay bylaw. So with the support of members of the Board of Selectmen who are sponsoring this proposed zoning amendment, let me just go over, hit the highlights of what the zoning amendment that's before you tonight would actually do. Perhaps the most important thing that it would do is it would remove the requirement that currently exists in section 3-10-05 that requires the multifamily residential to be in conjunction with some commercial component. So instead, the language that is before you would amend that particular subsection so that we would simply have as a permitted use, we would add in as a residential use, multifamily residential, perhaps we want to say apartment building, but to allow residential without there having to be a commercial component. The next primary purpose of the amendment would be to relax the requirement regarding the 10% of the residential units having to be dedicated as affordable units. So subsection 3.10.07 proposes to amend this requirement currently to allow the planning board, with a favorable recommendation from the Board of Selectmen, to grant a waiver from this affordability requirement following some consideration of criteria that is similar to criteria that you see in section 3.10.10 of the zoning bylaw. And then finally, the last significant amendment is what I would consider to be a housekeeping matter, which pertains to section 3.10.10 again. Right now, as currently written, your bylaw requires the planning board to act on a special permit application within 90 days of submittal of a completed application. That's actually not consistent with Chapter 48, Section 9, which would require final action within 90 days of the close of the public hearing. And certainly, as members of the planning board, I think you could appreciate that 90 days is a rather short period of time from the date an application would be filed to the opening of a public hearing and taking final action. So the proposed amendment before you would be to change that language to be consistent with the statute so that the board would not have to take final action on a special permit until within 90 days of the close of the public hearing. So the planning board remains the special permit and the site plan approving authority for any project in the mill conversion overlay district. The special permit criteria of section 5 is still going to apply to any project, and site plan review is also still going to apply. It's really just these three amendments that I've highlighted tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have regarding these amendments. Thank you.
All right, no, thank you. Bill, we have other speakers, don't we?
Yes, we do, Dan. We
So
might
if I
want
could
to
just address
ask,
the planning, if I could just address the other members of the planning board real quick.
sure.
Hear everybody first and then go through questions. I'm taking notes. What do you guys feel? Are you hearing us? Would you think we should take questions individually, or you want to take them at the end?
My thought, Mr. Chairman, would be we take questions now.
All right. Lou, you okay with that?
I'm good with whatever. I just hate to jump from the attorney to the developers. I mean, I just wanted some clarification with the attorney before we move to the next phase.
All right,
Okay.
good.
Me too.
That's enough. Okay, we'll start. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Carolyn?
Yes.
Yes.
Who did I get yeses from?
Richard.
All right, Richard, you want to lead off for us?
All right. Again, I apologize for my technical incompetency here, but from what I understood, this was being proposed by the Board of Selectmen, and you are presenting that on their behalf. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, if we were to take action on this evening, would we have to vote on each of these sections individually, or can we group them?
It's whatever the will of the board would be. You could certainly vote on them individually or as a slate.
Okay. And after our action has been taken, what would the next step in the process be? Go back to the Board of Selectmen?
The next step in the process would hopefully be to schedule a town meeting, and under the current circumstances, that's a little difficult to do. But the next step would be to present this to town meeting for a vote.
To present these proposed amendments to town meeting for a
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Richard. Anybody else on the board have questions?
Yeah, I did. I thought Lou wanted to chime in too. Lou, do you want to go before me, or?
It doesn't matter. I'll wait. I usually jump in at the other meetings. I'll let you go first today.
Okay, thanks, Lou. All right, first part I had a question about was the last section there where we're talking about the 90 days. I wanted to make sure I understood that clearly. So
Sure.
that 90 days is going to be, is that going to be increased? What is that term going to end up being?
It ultimately does expand the amount of time that you have to act on a special permit application under this section, because right now, the bylaw states that the planning board must act on the special permit within 90 days of submittal of the completed application. Instead, what we're proposing in the language is that be replaced with the fact that the planning board must act on the special permit application within 90 days of the close of the public hearing. So
Okay.
however long or however many sessions of the public hearing it might take, you have the amount of time you need, and then 90 days from the close of the hearing to actually issue your decision.
Gotcha. Okay, that clarifies that part for me. I wanted to go back to the 10% proposed dwelling units requirement that's in there now. Do we know where that came from? Why that's in the bylaws now? Was that anything that came from state law?
I can't speak to where that came from. I will tell you that there are a number of communities that have what we'll call inclusionary zoning bylaws, where in an effort to get your affordable housing up to 10%, a lot of communities will, as a requirement of, for so many residential developments, for so many units that are constructed, there sometimes is a minimum requirement that a certain number of those be dedicated as affordable units. But that is not something that is that is not a requirement for this zoning bylaw or any zoning bylaw to mandate 10% affordable dwellings.
Can you hear it though?
Mr. Chairman, this is Stephen Sullivan. Can I answer that for a second?
Yeah, most certainly.
And first, I want to thank you, planning board members, for inviting myself and Mr. Joseph to the meeting. Very important project in town. I was on the planning board when that mill conversion bylaw was passed, and the town council is essentially correct. Like most communities, we are below the 10% cap, which basically prevents a 40B project from coming forward. So when that bylaw was originally proposed, we had no projects in front of us of this scope or of any scope actually, and it was just put in there as almost like a firewall as an attempt to bring our 10% cap up from, we're somewhere in the 2% range now. So the original intent was there was no project before us. It was added in for a future project like this or any other project that may be able to help us get to that 10%.
Well, so the way I understood the 40B situation was that if we were under the minimum amount required for moderate and low income housing in a town, that did open us up to a 40B, possible 40B situation, that we actually, that the current situation is that it would be better to raise that number.
Correct. I think I can defer to counsel. She's probably more well-versed than I am, but yes, it would open up the town, I believe, to a 40B, which bypasses most of the local regulations and guidelines anyway. But the only answer to that, and it's not a tongue-in-cheek answer, is we haven't had one proposed before or since. So I would think if somebody was going to 40B the town of Dudley, we would have one by now. So I defer to counsel on that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. If you are below 10% of your current housing stock, if fewer than 10% of those in your community are considered affordable housing units that are on your subsidized housing inventory, as that inventory is maintained by the Department of Housing and Community Development, the town is susceptible to a 40B development being proposed. So I think that this was a tool by requiring 10% of any units coming into the mill conversion overlay. I think that this was a tool that the town was trying to use to hopefully increase its number of units on that inventory.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that is accurate.
Okay. Steve, you good? Any more questions?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess my main concern is I didn't want us to be in a situation where we were running up against the state government and accused of, for lack of a better term, snob zoning, or however you want to say it, trying to circumvent the process. But if we're not under any mandate from the state to do this, other than, that it does open us up to a 40B, I guess that answers my question.
Mr. Chairman, could I add in
Certainly.
in response to Steve's question that I believe that there is only one town, either adjacent to Dudley or adjacent to a town that's adjacent to Dudley, that currently has a 10% amount of affordable housing extant. The remainder, including Dudley, are all below 10%. And that was part of the research we did with the Board of Selectmen before we decided to commit to this particular project.
All right, thank you, Mr. Joseph. Steve, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good on that question. Thank you.
All right. Lou, you had a couple things to add.
I did. A couple quick questions, clarification. The amendments, is one of them that we're looking for, is that for the mixed use? Because if it's the overlay, mill overlay, that they don't want to do mixed use, they just want to do full residential?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, yes. From what I understand, and I think that the developers' representatives are, on the Zoom meeting, and they may have some additional comments they want to add, but at least their initial proposal was that this was going to be a purely residential development with no planned commercial component or if there was a commercial component discussed, it was something perhaps like a coffee shop or something, or a restaurant, but that was not a hard and fast component of their proposal yet.
So right now, based as it is, we require 10% low income and we require mixed use. So they're looking to get waived both of those.
Correct.
Okay.
I got another
If I
question
could
about.
just real quick, Steve, if I could just butt in here.
Yeah.
If Carolyn, if you can kind of confirm or tell me if a comment is about to be accurate or not. I think Lou said that this project is looking to have these amendments made, but it's not this project specific. This to be going forward for all future projects of this type, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. I mean, obviously, this current proposal is the impetus behind these zoning amendments, but if the zoning amendments were passed, it would apply to any project in the MCOD for any developer, whether it's the current developer who is in discussions with the town or a future developer.
All right, thank you. Sorry for that interruption, Steve. You want to go on or?
Yeah, I just wanted a quick clarification for myself. Tri-Valley occupies 10 Mill Street, that building in the back there. Is that not part of this mill complex, or is that a separate thing?
Perhaps Bill could.
It is a separate piece of property.
Oh, okay, all right, because I just thought maybe that was a commercial use there, but I guess that building is, I know that there used to be a connector between those two buildings, but I guess it's a separate building, so. All right, thank you.
Bill, did you have any questions? We good?
I'm good. I can try to pull up the presentation that the developer put together if you like, Dan.
I just wanted to ask Bill LePage if he has any questions.
Okay, sorry.
My questions were answered already.
Excellent. All right, Bill, yeah, if you can leave the next speaker on.
Steve, did you want to talk about the project a bit, or John?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. So I'm John Gumpert. I'm with the developer. We are looking to build a residential market rate apartment project with amenities serving the apartments. The project is uniquely sited on the river, so we would take advantage of the river itself as an amenity. We are considering, which we've done on several other projects, an event space that would be open to the public. Could be considered commercial. It's a place where folks can have special events like weddings and other gatherings throughout the community. Been very successful with that. We're also looking to potentially put a tap room or a coffee shop, but that hasn't really been vetted out to see if it would be practical or not. We have done a demand study for the residential, and we've gotten a very positive report back on that. So we're anxious to move forward with the project. We think it's got some real merit. We've presented some preliminary plans that show the units themselves, show the amenity areas, show the common areas. But again, it is a strictly residential project, although it does have this event space, which in our history is widely used by the community. So if you go to loraymill.com, that is our mill that we developed in Gastonia, North Carolina. We have a large event space there. The governor used that space for his annual meeting and address to the state. We also hold literally over 100 weddings a year there. So we think this has got some real benefits, and we're just excited about the project.
All right. Thank you.
Board might have.
I'm sorry, Steve, go on.
That's my recommendation. We would do one of the things the town, the planning board, and we still times for scheduling this public hearing. Of course, to speak in favor of the zoning amendment, and as town council aligned, I think the zoning amendment should provide for right of
With the audio.
Excuse me, gentlemen, the audio is very difficult to understand. Is there?
Yeah, me too,
Am I the
Richard.
only one experiencing that problem?
No, you are not.
I am
It's
also.
unintelligible.
Hear me now?
Negative.
How about now?
Perfect.
Good.
I
Excuse me,
turned it up.
can everyone see a presentation on their screen now?
No.
'Cause
No.
I'm not,
No, I
I'm
see
not-
Town of Dudley starting screen
for
share.
some reason, I'm not able to share the screen with the file that Steve sent. I'm trying to pull it up, but it doesn't seem to be loading up. You can't
So-
see that now?
Negative. I don't see anything
I'm
here.
not able to.
It's a black screen.
I wonder why it's not working.
Well, regardless, Steve, you want to start from the front so we can all get that audio again?
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Stephen Madaus. I'm an attorney at Myrick O'Connell in Worcester. And with me this evening, as you already met, John Gumpert and Andrew Waddell is on the call. They are the principals of the proposed developer. And we're here, of course, to speak in favor of the proposed zoning amendment as outlined by town council. I think the proposed amendment just provides greater flexibility for any developer. The member of the planning board was correct. This isn't unique to a single project, but the zoning amendment would be for any developer that would come along interested in this property. But it still retains oversight for the town through the planning board. And relative to the waiver for affordable housing, we have to get a favorable recommendation from the Board of Selectmen. So it's a two-tiered process. And then just as an aside, somewhat relative to 40B, it doesn't preclude an amendment. This amendment wouldn't preclude a 40B project in the future, of course, because under a comprehensive permit, you could override local zoning. But we're excited about the opportunity and the possibilities. It's a beautiful building, as you all know. And Mr. Gumpert and his team have done mill conversion projects throughout the East Coast, the closest being in Connecticut. So it's an experienced team that is kicking the tires, if you will, for this property. And this is just one step, an important step in making it viable for this proposal. And we submitted some very preliminary plans. Of course, we don't have a formal submission to the town, but just to give some indication of what we could do with the property. So we submitted those to the planning board. And we would take any questions that members may have. If you could see the plans, we do intend to retain the historic nature of the mill as intended by the bylaw, and also, as Mr. Gumpert mentioned, make the river a prominent natural feature for the redeveloped property.
Are those plans what you were trying to show us, Bill?
Say that again, Richard?
Bill, were those the plans that were just referenced? Are those the plans? Is that what you were trying to pull up?
Yes.
We haven't seen those yet, have we?
I believe I sent it, Steve sent it to me, I think, late last week, and I believe I forwarded that to the board.
You did, okay. Well, I don't recall seeing that. I do have the package that I picked up earlier this week, but it was not part of that inclusion. It was not enclosed in there.
Okay, sorry.
Does the planning board have any questions for Mr. Gumpert or Mr. Madaus?
Who wants to go first?
You can go.
Steve, you're on
Go
my
ahead,
screen.
Steve.
Why don't you head it?
No, Lou had his hand up, and I'm going to let him go first this time.
I had not looked at everybody's.
I guess my question is for both attorneys. what are the pros and cons of this amendment on mixed use? How is this going to affect us today? And how could this affect us
Right.
tomorrow?
So my view is it's a constraint currently that it requires mixed use, and by removing that as a mandate, it gives the developer more flexibility. As Mr. Gumpert mentioned, we are investigating whether we could include some mixed use. I think there was some kind of kitchen or something in there, some kind of space that might be suitable, but it constrains us otherwise as to making all the numbers work if we're required to do it as a certain percentage of the project. This gives us greater flexibility. But it would also be, if it was all residential, it's pretty much surrounded by residents in that neighborhood, from what I saw. So I don't think it'd be inconsistent if it was entirely residential.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to weigh in as well?
Please.
Please.
Thank you. So as far as the pros and cons with respect to the mixed use component, mixed use would still be an allowed use in the mill conversion overlay district. Because if you look at the proposed amendment to subsection 3.10.05, while we are allowing that a purely residential use of a multifamily residential use would be allowed, we're also adding in a subparagraph F that would allow any combination of the above uses, provided the planning board finds them to be compatible. So the zoning amendment, although it does allow for a purely residential development to go in, which the current bylaw does not do, it still leaves open the possibility that you could have a mixed-use development here. So that, I think, becomes sort of a neutral amendment, if you will. On the 10% affordable units, the proposal before you is not to do away with that requirement entirely. It is simply to give the planning board the ability to grant a waiver from that requirement. So I suppose the pro of the zoning amendment is if a project should present itself to the board that does include 10% affordable units, then the board or the town would benefit from getting some units added to its affordable housing stock, which certainly helps with respect to getting closer to that overall 10% threshold to hopefully guard against a future 40B project. At the same time, the amendment would give some flexibility for a development to go in here. I think the overall pro would be that, and certainly all of you have with a particular site than I do, but from what I understand, you've got a very large historic structure, challenges to any developer that was looking to actually structure as opposed to just demolish it and build something fresh. So I think that anything that could be done that would allow for the site to be developed and then obviously generate some tax revenue for the town, I would think is certainly a benefit to the town as opposed to a currently unutilized or underutilized site right at the entrance to the community.
Great, thank you. Lou, other questions or you good?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Bill LePage?
I'm all set.
All right. Richard, you good?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
I think Steve has a question.
Uh-oh.
So I just wanted to follow up on some of the comments. The attorney, I'm going to slaughter your last name there, is it Mondaus?
You got it.
Okay. You made a
That's pretty
comment
good,
about
yeah.
about the residential residents around there. And I was just going to say it also lends itself to commercial use. I mean, you've got Tri-Valley's on the back there. You've got the Canine Academy across the street. You've got O'Connor Insurance Agency right across the street from that. And then you've got the new Dunkin' Donuts right there. So it's actually in a very commercial area. So it would lend itself to commercial use. Regarding tax revenue, I mean, that's all the more reason why we would like to see mixed use commercial in there, because with commercial, we get tax revenue, but we don't get the added burden to services that we get if we have multiple residences in there that bring in kids, that bring in, because we all know that the school budget is a major portion of where all the money goes. And every time we add another kid to the school, it gets more expensive. And, you know, so that's why I really would like to see, I'd like to see some mixed use there. I'm, you know, for every square foot of space that we allow you not to build any commercial in there, that's just more square footage for actually that much more residential units. And again, goes back to the whole adding burdens to the town services and bringing in revenue on residential as opposed to commercial.
If I may, and not meaning to put anybody on the spot, but Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Joseph, you guys have been involved in the communication here with the developer for quite some time. I'm thinking that maybe you have already discussed some of the concerns that Steve just brought up. Is there anybody who would like to comment to that?
Stephen, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I know we had the meeting with town council and Mr. Scanlon was present, excuse me, and the developer had indicated that these would be more young professional types, or maybe even empty nesters looking to downsize, and the unit sizes were not going to be like majority 3-bedroom, which would lend itself to more people. And they did talk about, as the gentleman said earlier, maybe a brew pub or a coffee shop component on that first floor. And I just want to kind of piggyback on town council and everybody on the planning board. Obviously, we're all town residents. This is probably the 6th or 7th group that have come through that we're going to do something at Stevens. And I was not involved in the tour that they took recently inside that building. And for all indications and speaking with council, it seems like a pretty solid group. And I think the units lend themselves more towards not having a lot of children in there. And obviously, and you know, residential component can lend itself to other burdens on service, but it'd be water and sewer hookups, so it'd be an enterprise fund. That wouldn't be an issue. And the hope would be, as they phase these in, it'd just be a gradual buildup. It wouldn't be all done right away. So the impact would be spread out. And as I said, I don't believe the units lend themselves to having multiple children or school-age children in each unit. That's my understanding.
That was a motivation for me also, Stephen. But remember that regardless of whether there is commercial or residential property that is increased in value, we have a single tax rate, regardless, right? It's going to increase the same as it would in commercial as it would for residential. The other thing that was discussed by the Board of Selectmen, which, and I can only speak for myself as to why I was one of the ones that unanimously favored it, is that at a time when towns are struggling, we're looking at the possibility of taking an historic stone factory on the north side of Main Street and converting it into additional income producing property. At the same time, we are entertaining the possibility of a substantial commercial endeavor in the old Ethan Allen property down on the southern side of town. So there's not only a practical wisdom to it, there's something prideful in being able to even think about or having these two opportunities together. Not that they're bookends, but they both will generate additional significant income to the town.
right, thank you for that
Just to
input.
piggyback on Paul, Mr. Chairman, the previous owner of the Stevens Building has come before the Board of Selectmen a number of years, and we've unanimously supported the historical tax credits. And I don't have the number in front of me, but we talked with council at that previous meeting. I want to say it's somewhere north of 5 million historical tax credits, which I believe go with that property. So it seems like it's the impetus to try to save that structure and work from the inside out, as opposed to, as someone said earlier, they would have raised the structure and try to build from the ground up.
All right, thank you for that input. Bill Scanlon, do we have any other speakers that we want to bring in front of us, or?
Not that I know of. I think the applicant or the proponent has already spoken, so I think we're good there.
Does the planning board have any more questions?
I just have one more last question because you brought up the point of the school systems. Does the attorney know the account of how many 3 bedrooms, how many 2 bedrooms, and how many 1 bedrooms are to be planned for this project?
I can answer that. There are no 3 bedrooms, roughly 45 2 bedrooms, and the balance are 1 bedrooms.
And what is the balance?
It's 164 units total.
119.
Yeah, there's roughly 119. Those are rough numbers, but there are no 3 bedrooms. Our history tells us that the projects we do of this type, when you're converting a historic mill into residential, it's typically drawing young professionals and retirees, not families.
I like those numbers.
Thank you. Any other questions for the planning board?
Nope.
Yeah, unless any of the speakers want to bring any kind of closing comments or something, I'm comfortable, and I hope the planning board as well as closing the planning meeting and then talking about a potential vote right here. Any closing comments, anybody? Good to go.
We thank the planning board for its time and hope we encourage you to give a favorable recommendation to the amendment. Thank you.
Okay. All right, hearing nothing, it's 7:51. I'll close the public hearing for the Mill Conversion Overlay District. Discussion? Does the planning board have anything they want to discuss before we try to take this for vote?
I'm curious how many of the other members are comfortable with the first part of this amendment here, and basically doing away with any such requirement of any commercial use in that building in this project.
Excuse me, Steve.
Go first. If I can go first real quick, I've been kind of quiet so far. I was a little bit wary about listening to all this, especially online with this meeting. I just thought there's a lot of information, a lot of unknowns, and it just seemed like it would be difficult to process it all in just one quick hearing. I've been on the phone now for 40 minutes or so, but I think the whole team, everybody I've heard speak so far has done a great job of presentations. Obviously been a lot of background and discussions going into all this. I'm hearing, and if I just go back to my notes, that the items that are for a possible amendment aren't closing the door to anything that we currently have in the bylaws. It's simply expanding things, allowing developers as well as the town for more flexibility. And they're giving not only the planning board, but also the board of selectmen the chance to get in and to weigh in on anything that might come our way in the future to make sure that the project is right and the circumstances are correct. So I, for one, am very pleased with everything I've heard so far. And I mean, the reason I haven't asked any questions because everything has been seemed pretty clear to me from my standpoint. I don't know if that helps you at all.
Well, I think, I hate to disagree with you, Dan, but I just think that as far as giving more flexibility, I see where it gives the applicant more flexibility. But with that, in regard to that first section right there, essentially it's like, well, yeah, we're giving them the flexibility if they want to stick a coffee shop in there later. And, that's fine, but it's not, it kind of takes the teeth away from, as opposed to the way the amendment is now, that basically we're mandating that it's a mixed use. Am I wrong on that, or am I reading this wrong?
Is that correct, Town Council?
I want to be clear. Right now, the way the bylaw is written, you couldn't do a purely residential use.
Right.
So it would have to be residential in conjunction with some other commercial, institutional, or recreational or accessory uses. So the amendment would allow a strictly residential use to go in, but it also adds another subparagraph to the same section that would allow any combination of these uses. So you could still have a mixed use come in, whether it be commercial and recreational or residential. You could still have a mixed use come in, but yes, the amendment would also allow for strictly residential development as well.
Then I understood this correctly. So getting back to what Dan said, essentially, if we approve this amendment as written, at the end, when everything's all said and done, if this developer decided that they don't want to put any commercial use in there, then so be it. It will be 100% residential.
Question? Mr. Chairman, question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Joseph, go on.
For both the town council and for Attorney Madaus, is there anything to prevent the principals from taking the wedding, reception, function room, etc., coffee shop? Is there anything to prevent the principals from spinning that off as a commercial enterprise owned by the mill owners?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in my opinion, there is nothing in the zoning bylaw that would prevent that. But of course, all of this is subject to a special permit from the planning board.
Right.
So
right.
if the developer were to come in, and I apologize, there's an awful lot of feedback right now. If the developer were to come in with a residential component with a wedding banquet facility, then that would be a mixed use proposal for the planning board to consider. If the developer came in first as a purely residential development, and then later wanted to add this banquet community facility, in my opinion, they'd have to come back to the planning board to amend the special permit in order to be able to do that, because you'd have new considerations such as, the minimum parking and site circulation
Absolutely.
that the board would have to consider.
Mr. Madaus, do you have any thoughts?
No, thank you. I agree with town council. As I mentioned at the beginning, the purpose of the amendment is to provide flexibility for a developer that's looking to make a substantial investment to restore and preserve this beautiful historic structure. And as Mr. Gumpert said, from the development team, they are looking seriously at some of the components that would be commercial. But it's all about the numbers, of course. You have to make this work in terms of an investment, and flexibility is the key. So I would just caution, don't let perfect get in the way of good, but it doesn't preclude commercial development. That may be a part of this. We don't know yet. So, but I agree that I didn't really understand that term spin out, but if it's, the special permit, if it's specially permitted, that's what you're constrained to build or required to build.
It's not
But
mandated
that's
though.
part of it.
Thank you.
Excuse me?
It's not mandated though. If we vote on the
Correct.
amendment
Correct.
as written, it will no longer be mandated for you to do it. So it's all fine and good to talk
Correct.
about the possibility of creating this hall or coffee
Right.
shop and potentially making it a commercial endeavor. And my point that I'm trying to get back to is that the way that we have the amendment written now, if we don't change it, would require you to actually put some commercial use in there.
Ms. Murray, if
I
I could put you on the
acknowledge
spot
that,
real
and
quick. This is
whatever
Dan.
it will be subject to a special permit from the planning board. Whatever the mix is, or if it's entirely residential, it's subject to a 2/3 vote of the planning board.
Town Council, Ms. Murray, if I could just ask you here, put you on the spot. My understanding is when we make this amendment, that yes, there will be certain uses allowed or commercials, there's commercial space or not, if there's a 10% affordable or not, but everything is subject to special permit issued by the planning board, correct?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so Steve, just to get back to that, so yes, people can submit plans for things, but then we have that, we're the board that's gonna authorize that or not. So if we think for some reason, this is my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but if we think, hey, wait a second, no, we need this or we need that, we can make that as part of the requirement.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of council along that lines?
Most certainly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, town council, the net result tonight, we're looking for the planning board to give a positive recommendation, and the amendment still has to be approved at town meeting by 2/3 vote, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
I think Mr. Watroba has some valid points, but as Chairman Edmondson just said, if it's a positive vote tonight, when it comes time for the special permit or the town meeting vote, and it goes for the special permit, that'd be the time to really pin down any ancillary commercial use that might go along with this project, right?
Correct.
Okay. I thought I was getting confused from that meeting we had. We're just looking for a positive endorsement, if possible, from the planning board to move forward, to get it to the town meeting floor.
That's
Okay.
correct, Chairman.
All right,
So
thank
then
you.
let me ask my question this way of Carolyn. If this amendment is approved at town meeting and the planning board decides that we think that it would serve the town better to have some commercial use in there, could we then, through the special permit process, mandate that they do some commercial use? Or do we lose that if this is approved at town meeting?
In my opinion, the planning board, if this amendment is approved by town meeting, the planning board could not require a commercial component if that was not something proposed by an applicant.
Thank you. That's what I want. That's what I wanted to make sure everybody understood.
All right, thank you for driving that point home. Yes, it wasn't 100% clear for me either. Thanks. Anybody else on the planning board? Lou? Bill? Richard?
No, I think I understand it.
Dan, to the board, you don't have to vote tonight if you're not comfortable with the issue. You have more time
Yep.
to talk about it before town meeting. So it's up to you whether you want to call for a vote tonight or postpone the vote to the next meeting or the meeting after.
Oh, can I ask each one of the members if they're comfortable voting if they want to postpone? Is that kosher?
That is.
Richard, do you feel comfortable voting tonight, or do you want to wait till the next meeting and to discuss?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure what additional information would be forthcoming at this point. It sounds like we've heard from all of the parties involved. We've been given a bit of a history lesson by Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Joseph. Obviously, it looks like this is tailored for this one applicant, this one interested party, if you will. I have no objection to that. It does not preclude commercial development, as I understand it. It does not require it, but it does not preclude it. Again, I would question what additional information might be available to us.
Okay, Lou, what do you think?
I'm kind of in the same lane as Steve. I have no problem with the 10% or anything else, but not being able to require mixed use. That I'd like to talk about it at the next meeting personally.
Bill, LePage, what do you think?
Same.
As me or Richard?
Feel strongly both ways.
Same as you and Steve, yeah.
All right, so guys, just to surmise real quick, we're being asked to make a recommendation for put it on the motion for the town meeting here, if they have the town to vote for it. So Richard, you're kind of thinking we could theoretically vote about it tonight. The other three guys are saying you still want some time to think and so we further discuss.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if I could ask the other members of the board, what other information is it that they are looking for? Where are the gaps here and where is the lack in terms of,
I'm going to cut right through this for you. If I'm reading the other board members correctly, some of the other board members, I think they're kind of agreeing with me. And I think that if we postpone the vote, that would give the applicants a chance to maybe revisit this amendment the way it's written and maybe change it to something that might be more to the liking of the entire board and give you a higher success rate.
If I could just break in right here, I don't think that this is specifically for this project. I'm hearing that they're doing what they can to get a commercial aspect into this project, but this is more big picture. We're being asked to sponsor a motion for the town meeting to have them vote if this is going to be something going forward that the town can live with. So this is just not to this one project. I don't think we should get closed on that. We're talking a little bit more big picture right now.
And that's all the more reason why we should retain this this requirement to keep this in here for the planning board.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes.
There's also another option. I mean, you certainly don't have to vote tonight. You could vote when the board feels ready. The board can also offer an amendment to this as part of their recommendation to town meeting. So if there was some language with respect to the mixed use, and I don't have any to propose to you right off the top of my head, but perhaps something more along the lines of similar to what we're looking to do with the affordable housing unit. Don't get rid of the requirement altogether, but allow the planning board perhaps to grant a waiver from the combined mixed use requirement. That's certainly something that the planning board could propose as part of its recommendation.
And would it be possible to make such an amendment, a waiver that would give a permission not only of the planning board, but the board of selectmen as well?
That could be done, yes.
Steve, would that calm any fears or any concerns that you have?
I still think that I still think they should change the way that this amendment is written. But if Dan, if you really think you want to move forward with this tonight, I
don't want to force anybody into anything. It's just my feeling is this: if we were living if this was taking place in a town that had a more commercial aspect to it, and you can even talk about like in downtown Webster, for example, where there is street activity there. I don't want to mention any bigger cities, but even into Southbridge, downtown Southbridge a little bit, where there is more of a concentrated commercial aspect, I would 100% agree with what you're saying here. At Dudley, I think we're in a little bit of a different position. We don't have it probably as much of a commercial base as we want to have. And that kind of ties the town's hands as well as developers' hands as what can and can't be done. And that's the way I'm looking at it. I just see it, trying to look at it from what I feel is more of a Dudley unique perspective. So guys, if you're still not comfortable, if you want to postpone,
Mr. Chairman, would it be in order to propose that we table this matter for the rest of this meeting, if you will, to be reconsidered at our next meeting, so that we've had time to maybe give some further thought to it in terms of possible amendments or changes to the proposal that's presented to us this evening?
Yeah, if we go to postponement, I would love to take that time to try to find an amendment to this that would have the proper language that would keep everybody in a happy spot. I like the town council's idea, Ms. Murray's idea of having some kind of a waiver in there that would be granted by the dual action of the planning board and the board of selectmen. If you guys are okay with that, we can try to postpone till the next meeting, ask for some language to be written up, and then see if they can propose it, approve it then.
We need that in the form of motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Richard, make him.
I would propose that we table discontinue the public hearing, table this matter with regards to mill conversion overlay district, and to continue to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which would be April 22nd, 2020.
Can you add in there for the purpose of coming up with amendment language?
Well, the reason being that we would attempt to find some language that would be satisfactory to the perceived majority of the board.
All right, planning board, I have a motion on the table for the continuation of the meeting until our next scheduled meeting, for further discussion, as well as for coming up with language for a possible waiver that would grant authorization to the Board of Selectmen as well as the planning board for commercial uses. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, question.
Motion, yes, Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Clark's motion said discontinue the public hearing.
Well, I
said
apologize if the language was inexact, but maybe you could correct us with the correct
No, but then,
terminology.
then Chairman Edmondson, you just said continue the public hearing. If once it's closed, it can't be brought up again for further information. I just think the motion just got to be cleaned up a tad. And we usually Paul usually cleans our motions up, so.
All right, we need Mr. Clean.
Mr.
Just wanna
Chairman,
make
number one, a motion to table does not permit discussion, but simply a vote up or down. If you take a motion to table, then the motion would be to table and to continue the public hearing. The other option is that you can, as chairman, simply state that at this time, the board needs to consider additional information specifically to see if there's an amendment that will satisfy the needs of the majority of the board. And without objection, you will continue the hearing until, I think what I heard Dick say was the next meeting on April 22nd. So there's no discussion on the motion to table. And if you want to go that far, you can, but you simply can seek the unanimous consent of the board to table the issue and continue the public hearing until your next meeting on April 22nd.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add one thing to that?
Of course.
You did move to close the public hearing. And if the intent at this next meeting of the board is going to be for the purpose of being able to entertain an amendment that would either come from me, from the developer, or from some collaboration, I'd request that you actually make a motion either to rescind that motion to close the public hearing or to reopen the public hearing so that it can then be continued, so that you can then hear that additional amendment from me, from Mr. Maddouse, from others. Otherwise, it would have to be an amendment that is strictly in the confines of a planning board deliberation with a closed public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would concur that the best avenue is to rescind the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would withdraw the motion.
Is that okay with the second?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the motion's been rescinded. Now we're looking for a motion to table.
Well, Mr. Chair, if we could first also rescind the motion to close the public hearing.
Okay. So one of the members, can I get a motion to rescind the public hearing?
Dan, I think you closed the public hearing, so I think she's saying you need to rescind your statement to close
Yes.
the public hearing.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right, then my statement that the public meeting was closed is rescinded.
Here we go.
And then we can,
And now it
Vote
will be
on-
appropriate for a motion to continue the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I would
So
like
we-
to move, we continue the hearing on April 22nd, our next regularly scheduled meeting, April 22nd, 2020.
I have a motion on the table to, table the meeting and to continue at the April 22nd meeting. Do I have a second?
I think Paul was trying to say that you didn't want to use the language table the meeting.
Right.
Right. It's not a table.
Okay,
I think the
Continue.
motion was just to continue. I don't believe I used the word table.
Right, the
All right,
motion to
guys.
continue is appropriate, Dick.
all right, thank you. I have a motion to continue the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, I'll go for a voice. Richard?
Question, town council?
Yes, sir.
When we have a remote meeting like this and a vote of the full board is taken, should that be recorded as a roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes, it should be. Thank you for that.
Okay,
Okay. I believe my name was called.
Yes, sir.
I vote yay.
Lou?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Bill LePage?
Yes.
And Dan Edmiston, I vote yes as well. Meeting passed. Thank you to everybody for the procedural.
Dan, you forgot Steve.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm getting tired. No, I'm getting
Start
tired.
over.
Steve?
Start over.
But you had enough votes, so I guess that's okay, but yes.
Majority.
All right, at the fourth try, I now have a majority.
so is that Mr. Chairman, can you announce what the vote is of the roll call?
After roll call the members, I have a unanimous vote to continue the meeting.
Good,
Our next meeting.
thank you.
All right, thanks to everybody for their patience and for helping us out.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Good
evening.
night.
Bill,
I can leave.
Are we all done?
Yep.
Good night, all.
Good night,
Good
Paul.
night.
Good night.
Paul.
All right, Bill, is it okay for me to open the 7:15 public hearing?
Yes.
All right, it is 8:16. We're now opening the public hearing for the special permit and/or eligible facilities request. Application submitted by New Singular Wireless PCS to modify the wireless facility at the First Congressional Church, 135 Centers Road, by extending the height 8 feet and co-locating 3 additional panel antennas. All right. Believe we have a speaker?
Yes, Ed, you
Mr.
want
Chairman,
to,
members.
go ahead, Ed.
Good evening. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. Can you hear me now?
I
Yes.
got you.
Yes. Sounds
Wrong
like a
company.
commercial.
They're a competitor. Well, anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the planning board, and thank you for taking time and doing this Zoom meeting during these crazy times. My name is Edward Parry. It's P-A-R-E. I'm an attorney at Brown Rudnick, LLP. I am, well, we got the presentation up.
There you go.
So I will run through this quickly. AT&T has a, if you just want to flip through, Bill, I'll go to the substance of the slides.
Okay.
So AT&T is a wireless provider of communication services. They're licensed by the FCC. For those that don't know, back in 2012, the United States Congress passed something called the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012. It's also known as the Spectrum Act, which I'll refer to it as. So that allows AT&T to install or modify existing facilities that have been approved and are located on either towers or buildings. I note that AT&T was issued a special permit to install its facility back in 2003. I'll also note that we recently received in a letter dated 2/25 that the Massachusetts Historical Commission had concurred that there are no adverse effects on significant historic or archaeological properties. And I only raised that because I know that was a big concern back in 2003 when AT&T was installing. Bill, if you could switch slide. So the AT&T installation is on the bell tower at the First Congregational Church. The bell tower is 82 feet in height. Currently, we have 6 antennas in a 10-foot screen. The antennas are surrounded by fiberglass so that the system will still produce coverage for AT&T customers in the area. And at the same time, it looks more like a flue at the top of the bell tower. AT&T's electronic equipment.
Excuse me, Ed, I'm trying to get back to your presentation here. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it should be probably slide 3. I can continue. I don't think I really need it up on the screen if that's. If you want to bring up the photo sims as the separate attachment, I can walk through this quickly. And you want me to continue, Bill, while you work through that?
Yeah, go ahead, Ed. I'll try to get it up for you.
Okay. So as with all of these wireless facilities, there are electronic equipment cabinets that need to be installed to service the customers and the antennas, and that's all located behind the church in a fenced compound and is not visible. So what AT&T is asking permission to do is to replace the existing canister with a taller canister, and what we'd be able to do is co-locate 3 additional panel antennas inside the new canister. So the canister, the diameter would be the same. It's 42 inches. We'd basically move the 6 antennas that are in there now up by that 8 feet and install the 3 new antennas down at the base of the canister. So as I mentioned, there's this new federal law that lays out some parameters, and if it's within those parameters, the carriers can seek approval to do the modifications. And basically, if it's a building like we have here with a base station, we can't increase the height by more than 10 feet. We can't protrude off the edge of the building by more than 6 feet. And in this instance, we don't do that at all. We cannot require excavation out. We can't excavate outside the site without permission, nor can we add more than 4 additional equipment cabinets. So we fit within all the parameters. I submitted a legal brief in support of our application to show how we satisfy each of those parameters. I also go through each of the components of the bylaw, but as I said, federal law dictates that these modifications be moved quickly and approved as soon as possible. Some boards, some planning boards and zoning boards, go through a process of either amending a special permit or, granting approval. Under the federal law, what we're seeking from the planning board is a finding that we're not substantially changing the physical dimensions of the base station, which are those parameters I just ran through. As I said, all of this is laid out in detail in my legal brief. Likewise, the board could amend the special permit. We continue to provide coverage both from public safety perspective and for AT&T customers in the area. The nice thing here is that we're utilizing the existing facility, increasing the height of a screening device canister by 8 feet to install. So we don't have to go and do an entirely new installation. We don't have to propose a self-supporting tower. This works both for AT&T, the church, and we think the community. The canister will be painted to match what's up there now. And Bill, I don't know, were you able to get the photo sims?
I'm working on it, Ed.
Okay. So I don't know if everybody has their packets, but what we did was we provided a set of photo simulations that show before and after photographs. And as you might expect, we are, the canister is the same diameter, it's just 8 feet taller on the church. I don't think I have the ability to share those, but Bill, if I email you another set, can you?
There's something wrong with the program here. It's not letting me share things.
We have it all in the package that was.
Yeah, if you have packets, then you have everything. And if you can flip to the photo simulations to see them. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's pretty straightforward. We're, AT&T, and as with many of the carriers, are upgrading their facilities. And this is just another example of doing that. And I think it'll be a great benefit to the community, and it's consistent with the prior approval. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, may I question the presenter, please?
Go for it.
As per our agenda, mention is made to modify the wireless facility. As per the letter dated February 6, 2020, you are seeking approval to replace with new canister that extends an additional 8 feet above the top of the bell tower for a total of 18 feet. I don't know if it's a matter of semantics, but obviously, at least in my way of thinking, modify and replace are two different words with different meanings.
Well, I think we're referring to modifying our facility, and that's what's permitted under the federal law. I'm not sure of the two documents you're referring to, but if you take
one of them, if I may repeat myself, excuse me.
Yeah.
One of them is the agenda, which is published 48 hours in advance of the meeting and is available to the public.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the February 6th letter that you sent to the Town of Dudley Planning Board, copy to Bill Scanlon, acting town planner.
I do think it's a matter of semantics, because we are modifying an existing facility, and part of that is replacing the canister. But by replacing, it's increasing the height by 8 feet. So
okay,
I do think it's a modification, because there is an existing canister that's 10 feet above. We're extending that by 8 feet.
All right, I take it very differently, I have to confess. I would go further in your letter. Reference is made to let me just find the particular citation. I want to make sure I have this correct. Let's see. AT&T's facility has and continues to comply with all applicable terms and conditions of the bylaw. That is the Dudley Zoning Board bylaw, I assume, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then, if I may, I'd like to refer to the bylaw, section 11.04.00, use of existing structures. It is the intent of the bylaw that not to permit extensions to the height of existing personal wireless service facility structures, which already meet the maximum height of 90 feet. You are in excess of 90 feet at this point and are proposing to make addition to that. I don't read that as being consistent with the conditions of the bylaw.
Well, it is, because it's consistent with the federal law provisions, which allow us to go up.
Excuse me, sir, excuse me. Is that consistent with the bylaw? You stated that you are consistent with the bylaw as of February 6th. I've just cited the bylaw. Can you tell me how you are consistent with the bylaw? Aside, federal law aside. This is your stipulation.
What is the bylaw provision again? Can you just read the bylaw provision?
Okay. It is the intent of the bylaw not to permit extensions to the height of existing personal wireless service facility structures, which already meet the maximum height of 90 feet. And you are at present, per your letter of 2/6, at 91.8 feet. So you are in excess of that. And if I may read further, in section 11.05.00 dimensional requirements, under height, it stipulates facilities do not project above the existing building height by more than 10 feet and are completely camouflaged. And you are proposing to go from 8 feet to 18 feet, which I see as a difference with 10
Oh,
feet,
10
as
well,
consistent
10,
with the bylaw.
I'm sorry, it's 10 feet to 18 feet.
Right. And the bylaw, as I read it, not more than 10 feet.
Yeah, I'd have to look at, I mean, I don't have I'll punch up the bylaw in front of me in 1 second so that I
All
can.
right. I would suggest that you perhaps do that. I would also add that obviously you had received permission for this back in 2003. Since then, some things have changed in the area, and we now have a National Registry of Historic Places, Dudley Hill District, Historic District, which is described as encompassing the heart of Dudley, okay? One of the things that I found very interesting when I accessed the website was the picture that was shown there was of the church, the Congregational Church on Dudley Hill. But it did not show your cell tower. I suspect that was probably intentional.
I'm sorry, it didn't show what?
It didn't show your cell tower. It was cut off so that we saw some portion of the bell tower, but we did not see the cell tower, which I think is inconsistent with the church itself. I question, I had some real issues with this. I think 18 feet is way over the top in terms of anything that I see in the bylaws in the town. I live perhaps a mile away, and I can see this from my backyard as it is now. 18 feet or another 10 feet on top of that, and that thing is going to hang out there like I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referencing, but the tower, so that's confusing me a bit.
What? I'm sorry? Where's the confusion, please?
You're referencing that you don't see the tower. The tower is on top of the bell tower.
I see. I can see your canister from where I live, sir, which is about a mile away, as it is now. And you're proposing to make it even taller, if you will, 18 feet.
Correct.
I sometimes have trouble visualizing things, so I try to interpret this in terms of something we might be more familiar with. And a Ford F-150, something everyone might perhaps be familiar with, a 2020 Ford F-150 comes in at a little less than 18 feet. So effectively, you're putting the length of an F-150 on top of this 130-year-old church tower.
Well, I wish you could. Do you have the photo simulations there?
Do I have what?
Do you have the photographs that we submitted?
Oh, yes, I have the photographs that you submitted, and my compliments to your photographer. I assume that they were taken by someone other than yourself. Is that correct?
They were.
Yeah.
They were taken by the engineering firm that we retained.
All right. And
so let me step back before. So as long as we fit within the federal law, and I am scrolling through your bylaw right now, and I'll get to the.
I would remind you, if I may, sir, that you indicated, your indication in your communication of February 6th was that you were compliant with all applicable terms and conditions of the bylaw. I would submit that that's not necessarily the case now, unless you want time to further research the bylaws.
No, I agree. And I would say that the 10-foot limitation, because of the federal law, is not applicable. So it's not that we conform to your bylaw.
Sir,
we conform to the applicable.
I'm not saying you conform to our bylaws. I don't think you do, but you said that you did. You said that you did.
If I can just interrupt for a second?
Yes, sir.
Bill Scanlon, is there any kind of input you want to put in here as far as bylaws and federal law is concerned?
Well, it's sort of my understanding that the federal law preempts the local law, so that the federal law allows for a minor alteration if I believe if it's less than 10 feet or 20% of the height of the tower, something of that sort.
Preempts or supersedes?
Well, it's allowed.
Okay, there is a
it would be allowed by federal law. I think, yeah, supersede might be a better word. It's allowed even if the local bylaw prohibits it. So the federal law would preempt it.
Excuse me, Bill, if I may, I do find on the second page of that letter, again dated February 6th, modifications do not increase the height of the base station by more than 10 feet. So what we're doing is not modifying, we are replacing. We're going to put up a new tower, as I understand it, which will be 18 feet in height, which obviously is greater than 10 feet. And I think if we look at the percentages, it's greater than that as well. You've got an 82-foot tower, and you're bell tower, a 130-year-old structure, if you will, and now you're putting something 18 feet or so on top of that.
Well, we're not. We're
No, you are.
extending.
You are.
If I might try to be responsive, if I could have a moment.
Okay.
Thank you. So we have an existing 10-foot base station on top of the bell tower. We're looking to increase that 8 feet. That's within the 10-foot federal parameter, which does in fact preempt the local bylaws. So long as we don't substantially change the physical dimensions of the base station, then the installation must be approved. And we're extending it by 8 feet.
All right. You have an existing structure, correct?
We have an existing structure at 92 feet.
Is that a yes or a no, sir?
Yes, at 92 feet.
Okay. Is that structure coming down? Is it coming down?
I don't know that the entire thing, probably not. We'll probably extend what's there.
Okay, so it's not a it's not a replace then. I think there's something wrong with.
Okay, guys, if I can just jump in, I'm going to try to keep this moving a little bit. Obviously, Richard has problems or has concerns based on the bylaws and how they relate to this. Steve, do you have any concerns?
Well, actually, I had a question on that, on this proposed conditions, this photograph.
Yes.
So proposed conditions means this is like a Photoshopped thing that would basically show what this is gonna look like when it's completed. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's
Okay,
correct. So that's done. It's not a Photoshop, but it's done by our engineering firm.
Okay. Well, photo magic. They made something appear there that's not there yet.
Mr. Pierre, through the chair, is that cylinder, is that image of what's existing or what it's going to look like when it's extended, if it is extended?
I think the packet is quite extensive. And if I may speak for you, Mr. Perry, the photo packet is quite extensive. It shows not only existing, but also proposed from many different angles.
Yeah, I'm looking at this.
That showed was more direct. Yeah, that's more, I think that's 300 feet away looking straight at it. That is the proposed, if I'm not mistaken.
That's proposed.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yep.
Right. If you're looking at the first page, I don't know what you're looking at, but if you're looking at the first page, that's proposed. And as you flip through, you'll see we provided a visibility analysis on the second page. And then as you go through, you'll see at the top existing conditions.
Okay.
And then the one that follows will be proposed conditions. So you'll see that the installation increases by the 8 feet I'm talking about, and each photo will do that. So you'll have existing, it's in blue across the top title page, and then you'll have proposed. And from each of those locations on that photo location map, you can tell where the photos were taken from.
Bill Scanlon, I got to give you credit. I know I keep seeing the black screen come up, so he's trying real hard to show us these pictures.
Right, it'll come up.
But it's still not working. But I had a question for.
But if you have them in your packet, you can flip through them. I mean, I don't know how many slides there are, 15 or 16.
So I had a question for Bill. Is my understanding that are there no members from the public to speak here on this issue?
I don't have anybody else waiting in the waiting room, so I think that's correct.
Okay.
And then planning board guys, this is what my intent is to try to determine if in general each member has concerns or shares Richard's concerns about the height of the proposed modification, as well as how it goes against our bylaws. And then once I determine how many members share those concerns, to ask Bill Scanlon, what action can we take if we're against this? And I think I know the answer. I just want to make it clear to the rest of the members of the board.
Well, we are treating this as a special permit application. So that would require a supermajority vote of the board to approve.
And based on Just give me a second. Based on this being an eligible facilities request, and the different laws that we heard about, if we were to have concerns and our vote reflected that, would there be most likely feedback from attorneys?
Yes, I would think so.
Well, yeah, I mean, these eligible facilities requests, as long as we meet the parameters, are to be done administratively, and that was also part of the submission. So while the board can approve it as they see fit, we don't think we need a supermajority vote. We don't think there's an appeal period, but we're willing to work with the board to try to get to the right conclusion. I will say that the federal law that I've been speaking about doesn't give any discretion as long as we fit within those parameters. So I would just caution, we're happy to take questions. We don't know if people from the public will show up at these various meetings and hearings. But I do want to be clear that so long as we fit within the parameters of the federal law pursuant to the eligible facilities request under the Spectrum Act, then the application must be approved. So I would just caution the board to take some heed to that requirement.
I think I just
Thank you for that, Mr. Perry. I just wanted to also, before we get too much further, there's a lot of information that you've provided, and obviously gone through a lot of trouble. That is appreciated. I was able to read through everything. There's a lot of information there, and it kind of, for me, kind of cleared things up a little bit. So if the board can ask the questions, I'm a little bit wary about. To me, the laws here are a little bit more direct than maybe to some of the other guys.
I don't have the federal law in front of me, so I can't make that conclusion. I understand where Mr. Clark's coming from. I think he's made a very valid case that the town bylaw regarding this has been already violated, and that this extension would further violate the bylaw. But I think also Ed's point is he's saying that there are federal laws that would supersede, and I think that's what Bill was saying, that there are federal laws that would supersede it and make our town bylaws pretty much null and void in this.
Correct. So
I'm understanding as well. Correct. Yep.
So I'm wondering what the federal laws are. Do we have those?
Mr. Chairman.
I described the federal law that's in the packet. If you have my packet and my letter.
Yeah. I think I have a ton of stuff here.
Yeah, the federal law, if you look at the FCC notice, I could tell you what tab it's at. It's probably at the second, there. I'm just going to bring up the federal law is very brief, and I'm trying to I don't have my application up, but I will get it if the board will indulge me for 1 second.
Bill LePage, you had a quick comment, or?
That my question was going to be if that law was in this packet.
It is.
Yeah. There's what I received was there's a letter dated February 6, 2020 to the Dudley Planning Board. It's the request for the new Singular Wireless PCS LLC AT&T for administrative review. It starts off, dear honorable members of the planning board, Dudley Planning Board. I've got approximately 10 pages plus a couple attachments.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
It goes through all the federal laws and everything else, and it's all listed right there.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go for it.
I would jump to page 2 of that letter dated February 6th, if I may.
Yep.
And reading towards the end of the first paragraph, the regulations determine that any modification to a base station that meets the following 6 criteria does not substantially change the physical dimensions of the existing base station, and therefore is an eligible facilities request which must be granted. Number 1, modifications do not increase the height of the base station by more than 10 feet or 10%, whichever is greater. Now, from what I understand is the base station is going to be replaced and a new facility to be installed, which will be greater than 10 feet, 18 feet to be exact. So I read this to be a violation of that first condition as stated on page 2 of that February 6th letter.
And
And that citation, I believe, comes from acceleration of broadband deployment by improving wireless facility siting policies, FCC docket number 13-238, report and order number 14-153, October 17, 2014, final rule codified by 47 CFR point 1.6100. I know attorneys like to be exact, so hopefully I have all the citations correct.
Well, if I may, we are not installing a new 18-foot appurtenance to the bell tower. We're installing an 8-foot addition to a 10-foot base station. So I think there's a struggle. Well,
then I'm back again, sir, to my question regarding the word replace that's on the first page of your letter. Because replace does not say adding, it is in place of. If I replace my vehicle, I replace it with a new vehicle. I have it added to the vehicle.
So let me give you the direction to the federal law. If you look at the end of my letter, after the list of attachments, the federal law is sitting there. It's called 47 USC, US Code 1455. I'll give everybody a minute to get to it. It's one paragraph.
All right, you may need to give us a bit more than a minute. Is this under any of your appendices?
It's the first attachment. So if you go to the end of my letter, there's a list of attachments. It's the next page.
Next page. Yep. Okay. Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012.
That's the one. So section 6409, wireless facilities deployment. Section A, facility modification. Section 1, in general. That is the federal law that we're dealing with. And I'll read it if it's okay with everyone. Notwithstanding section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 or any other provision of law, a state or local government may not deny and shall approve any eligible facilities request for a modification of an existing wireless tower or base station that does not substantially change the physical dimensions of such tower or base station. Very direct, very short, and then you can see how an eligible facilities request is defined. And that is the co-location of new transmission equipment, the removal of transmission equipment, or the replacement of transmission equipment.
All right, let me ask for clarification. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I hesitate, I don't wish to interrupt, but I do need clarification if I may. The reference made on page 3 of your letter dated February 6th refers to something that apparently was codified as of October 17th, 2014. The act that you cited is dated 2012. Which has standing here?
Okay. The act itself, the federal law was passed in 2012. That's the name of the act. It was signed into law in 2012. What you're referring to, the regulations, which I referenced, the FCC adopted a report and order, and the regulations became effective on October 17th, 2014. So that spelled out and clarified what the statute said pursuant to the FCC regulations. So statute was enacted in 2012, FCC issued regulations in 2014.
So the regulation is further defined in 2014. Is that your statement?
The regulations were further defined?
Further
No,
defined or further clarified? Is it you saying, or do I understand you to say that what happened or what is codified on October 17th, 2014 was a clarification? And
there were regulations promulgated under the statute by the FCC.
Okay. Then where and what is the value of that first condition that's identified there?
What's the first condition?
Modifications do not increase the height of the base station by more than 10 feet or 10%, whichever is greater.
If I could break in here real quick, sorry, Mr. Pryor, if I can just break in real quick. We're going back and forth in this word modification. There's a set of plans that got submitted as well with this packet. And if I can refer everybody to Plan S1 and Plan S2, it shows the lower part of the portion of the tower, which I'm going to get the dimensions wrong, but if it's 8 feet, it's 8 feet. And it's showing a portion being placed on top of that that's another 10 feet. Nothing's being taken completely down and put completely back up. There is an addition to the top of what's already there. I would definitely call that a modification. Even if it's, to me, modification is not talking about the piece of equipment, it's talking about the whole entire building / assembly. There's a list of 6 requirements there that making sure that they're not going up too high or over too high or extending out. It just, I'm trying to,
Correct. So
I'm
I
trying
think
to cut to the chase here a little bit because we've been going back and forth over these two words now for quite some time, and it just.
So let me cut to the chase. We have an existing facility. It's being modified. Whether it's being replaced, we're not increasing. We're not asking to add an 18-foot structure, a new 18-foot structure on the top of the tower. That would not fit within the Spectrum Act or the regulations. We're looking to extend an existing 10-foot base station by an additional 8 feet. That is within the 10 feet. If that first piece wasn't there, there's nothing to modify, and I would agree with the member that we can't go up to 18 feet under this act. We can go up an additional 10 feet. We've chosen, we only need 8 feet, so that's all we're using.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one more question. Is it hypothetically possible that you might come back in 5 years and say, oh, we want another 10 feet? I mean, is this death by 1,000 cuts? At what point is it no longer, excuse me, sir, at what point is this no longer a bell tower, but a cell tower?
Well, that's a great question. So under the federal law, you get one bite at the apple to extend to fit within the parameters of the Spectrum Act. So we can't come back and extend, another 10 feet. Since the Spectrum Act passed, you get one pass after 2012 to extend and modify an existing base station or tower. So yes, you can't go on for infinitum. It could go up to 10 feet at the maximum under the Spectrum Act. As I said, we only need 8 feet. So that's why we only propose to go up 8 feet, not 10.
Hey, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question for you. I was wondering, I was reading this, the original application here that's in our packet, and I noticed that there was an item here and it said that the planning board's technical consultant, I'm gonna get this name wrong, Mr. Pegasic, has reviewed the AT&T wireless application. I was wondering, do we have a current technical consultant?
I have to defer to Bill Scanlon on that. I think this was reviewed back in February, if I remember correctly.
No, we haven't enlisted a peer review for this particular project, Steve.
Oh, it hasn't.
Oh, okay.
Lou, Bill LePage, any questions?
No. Just one to Bill. Sorry, Chairman. So he keeps referring to this federal law. Can you bring everybody up to speed on that and just clarify what our role is here and isn't here?
Well, I think Ed sort of described it accurately. It's called an eligible facilities request, and Congress deemed that such minor modifications of cell tower equipment are a priority for communications across the country, and they decreed that local communities should not interfere with very minor changes to cell equipment. So they established this rule, in which the FCC then codified further, saying that if you met the standards for what a minor modification is, then it's really an administrative review by the local community, and there's very little discretion on the board's part in terms of approving or not approving if you agree that it is an eligible facilities request.
Excuse me, Bill, I love the way you coach the terminology, the reference to minor. I don't see anything about this as being minor. 18 feet to me is not minor. 10 feet to me is not minor. They are already in excess of the 90 feet that is the intent of the bylaw. This just goes on infinitum, apparently.
Well, as I said, it doesn't go on infinitum, and with respect to other types of installations, I mean, people approve. planning boards and zoning boards have approved installations, they've approved tower facilities, and the federal law just takes away these, what they've deemed to be minor modifications, and it's to generate more competition, generate jobs, generate tax revenue. That's what Congress decided. So they've taken that discretion, like the special permit discretion, away from local boards, and to allow the carriers to deploy and upgrade their networks. Not everybody has to agree with it, but the federal law is the federal law.
Then why, if I may, then why do we bother with zoning bylaws at the local level? If the federal law takes precedent, then we're wasting an awful lot of time, it would seem, and energy.
Well, for this particular application, I would tend to agree with you, but in other applications, your rights are preserved, under the federal law, so you can approve tower facilities, rooftops, new installations, but once something is approved, then these modifications as deemed, I don't want to say insignificant, but, not substantially changing pursuant to the federal, definitions of such. Frankly, I agree. I think it should be done administratively, and, other towns do them administratively, and we pull a building permit. We made the application, we were sent to the planning board. Frankly, I think it's a, administrative vote. That's the way it should be done, but, it was requested that we appear at a public hearing. We're doing so.
Well, aside from my questions with regards to the length of this facility, of this installation, I do have some concerns in terms of what is now a historic district, so designated. I don't think this is in character with that at all. I don't know why my screen has gone black, but it has. Is everyone still there? I guess so.
Yes.
I guess I said the magic word, historic. Right across the street, you have one of the historic jewels of the town of Dudley, the Black Tavern. And someone walking out of there, I suspect one of the things they're going to see is this unhistoric, I don't know if that's even a word, but certainly not anything that's contemporary with the church dating back to 1890, attached to the very top of it and very obvious from ground level and from a number of locations. I mean, it's not in keeping with the district at all, not even the slightest.
Well, and with due respect, the historic review remains in place. That's not something that was displaced. And as I mentioned at the outset, well, can I finish though? What I mentioned at the outset, we have to go to what we call the State Historic Preservation Officer to modify our sites. We went to the Mass Historic Commission and they approved it. I've submitted the letter that they have no objection with it. So the idea that the Massachusetts Historic Commission has deemed this not to be substantially, whatever the language there, that we're not significantly interfering with historic assets. So while there may be historic assets in there, we've complied in full, and we have an obligation to do so.
Was there any local input as far as that process is concerned?
That I don't know. In my experience, usually the Mass Historic Commission reaches out to the local historic districts. I've appeared before many of them. Sometimes they hold meetings, sometimes they don't. My experience is Massachusetts Historic always reaches out to the locals, but it's not our obligation to do that. We work at the state level through the State Historic Preservation Officer, through if you're a historic buff, through the Section 106 process. And that was done, and it has been approved.
I did contact the chairman of the Historical Commission about this application, and I have not heard back from them. So I'm not sure what their position is on this matter.
It sounds
But
like
if they had a position, they would take it up to the Mass Historic Commission. Is my point.
Well, you're assuming that they may have, or they may. Well, we don't know for sure at this point.
We don't, but I don't think that's part of this purview. That's a separate process through the Section 106 process, in which we've undertaken and received approval for.
I understand. Well, gentlemen, I'm addressing this to the board. I think I've made my objections known, my questions known at least, and it's not my intent to support this or to move this question forward in a favorable vote. It is obviously your choice in terms of how you care to vote, and I would ask you to consider some of what I think are pertinent issues. Thank you.
All right, Bill, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, the best way to possibly proceed would be to accept or have a motion made to accept this as an eligible facilities request? Vote on anything after that, or is just accepting that good enough to pass this, or we have to vote on it afterwards?
Well, it's a little unclear because of the two issues that you're talking about. I would, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I think since they've applied for a special permit, that quorum would be required in order to approve the project. Now,
Well, if I can, just to correct, so we applied for approval as an eligible facilities request, and in the alternative, requested a special permit, you know, pursuant to the planning department. So procedurally, I think the best way to proceed is to deem whether it's an eligible facilities request. Then you can make a finding whether it is it substantially changes the physical dimensions of the base station pursuant to those definitions. The vote on the special permit, I guess, is sort of up to you, but I only need a majority approval as an administrative matter. If you also want to vote on the special permit, that's fine, but you know, my approval will suffice. If I get an administrative approval that it's an eligible facilities request, it doesn't change the physical dimensions of the base station.
And Bill, what kind of vote do we need to accept this as an eligible facilities request?
simple majority, Dan.
Simple majority.
Yes.
So, planning board, my opinion, from what I'm hearing, is I'm gonna get the terminology wrong here, like I've been doing all night. That this laid out pretty clearly that this is an eligible facilities request. There are obviously concerns about the historic district and about the height of the building and the tower, but those decisions were made already for us whenever this was requested back in 2000, whatever, 2003, I think it is. I think that if we can accept the motion as an eligible facilities request, I think that we will hopefully give the planning board members who are against it a chance to vote against it with hope in the majority, and it us up to further problems that we don't need. Just kind of go through it. That was my general idea. What do you guys think, Lou?
I'm in agreement with you. I don't think there's much we can do. I mean, we might not agree with the height. We might not agree because it's a historical building, but evidently federal law overrides town bylaws. So,
And Lou, I agree with you on that point, except for one problem, and that is that, quite frankly, and no offense to you, Ed, but we're taking Ed's word for it that that is in fact the case, and I'm not necessarily convinced of that. I think Rich has made a very good argument that the town bylaws have been skirted, and so really it's a matter of, and I'm going to base my vote on that. I don't think that's clear to me, that the federal law gives that jurisdiction.
Okay, then I want to avoid any type of issue here, then I would suggest, do you meet every 2 weeks?
Correct.
So I don't want to end up in a situation where you're doing something that's going to cause us to react to that. I would suggest, and I wish Carolyn had stayed on because KP Law is well versed in this. I deal with them every week with respect to various wireless installations. I would suggest that if you're not going to approve this, and if the board senses that there's going to be a denial, save everyone a lot of aggravation, I would suggest that you contact KP Law, or if that's your counsel on general matters, and they'll pose the question, and I am so confident in the answer that I have no issue in waiting an additional 2 weeks.
Bill LePage, are you okay with the idea itself, or are you thinking that we might want to postpone?
Yeah, before Ed just brought that up, my suggestion was going to be if we could, consult town council, just put to bed any confusion or, what our role is or isn't here, just to save us all some aggravation down the road. And Ed said he's fine. We'll wait in 2 weeks to the next meeting. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And I thank you for suggesting that, Ed.
Also,
And
Ed,
again,
one more question.
I'm happy to wait the 2 weeks, but I would like a commitment that you'll speak to KP Law before then.
Ed, one more.
I can ask the town administrator. We don't have direct line to town council, but he's usually very cooperative in terms of letting us get a legal opinion.
Okay.
And also, through the building department, you said you applied for a building permit. Did Nelson, the building commissioner, request a special permit? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, he did want us to go.
This route that you're covered.
Yeah, he did want us to go to the planning board. So that the issue I have is that if you don't vote by supermajority to grant the special permit, then he's not going to issue the building permit. But I don't need your special permit. I just need, that we're an eligible facilities request and that we don't, substantially, basically we comply with those parameters under federal law. I'm quite confident KP Law will back up everything I've said. I don't even think we have to get to the next step. But I don't want to end up in a situation where I receive something from this board, I go to the building official, I don't get our permit, and we're at the same place. We're getting real close to it right now that,
Yeah, my suggestion was going to be that Bill also, consult with town council on the special permit thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't have a problem with the board issuing a special permit. It's just that it doesn't need to be a supermajority, and it doesn't need to, there's no appeal period. But we're not looking to bully municipalities. We provided notice to abutters. If people want to come and complain about things or voice their opinion, we're all for that.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that town council can tell us that we do not need the special permit. Well, that Nelson's also, notified, so he doesn't give you any resistance when the time comes, if it comes.
No, that would be great. That would be great. Thank you.
All right, so Bill Scanlon, you can reach out for us?
Yes, I will, Dan.
All right, so for the planning board, if I could have a motion from one of the members to continue the public hearing for our next meeting.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we continue the public hearing to the next meeting, April 22nd, 2020.
All right, thank you for that. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I think I have to go through the motions again, or the motion of roll call vote. So Steve?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Richard or Louis?
Yes. Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
And myself. So that's a majority, five votes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Perry, for all your information and your time.
Yep. Before we go,
can
can you just give me the date again? When Mr. Clark mentioned it, it was a
2
little
weeks.
muffled. Is it 4/22?
Yes,
Correct.
2 weeks from tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. So I see that the gentlemen for our 7:30, excuse me, for our 7:45 public hearing are on already. I just had to back up real quick. We have a 7:30 public hearing. There has been a continuation requested from JD&E Construction. Continued until our next meeting on the 22nd as well.
Yes, Dan, I got a request in from Dave Ochaki late this afternoon asking for a continuation. They are still working on the legal documents for the transfer of the Chestnut Tree petition, which needs to go to town meeting, but he doesn't have anything new to report tonight. So he just asked for a continuation until he has the attorney provide the proper documentation and opinion from town council.
Should we get a roll call vote on that as well? Do we need a roll call vote for that? To close it, to continue?
Yes, to continue, you do need a motion and a
All
vote.
right. If I can have a motion for continuation of the JD&D construction public hearing?
I would so move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second,
All right, so roll call
Yeah.
vote. Steve?
yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
And myself, yes, 5-0, we're good. Means I can open our 7:45 public hearing. Major site plan review application submitted by Peter Bannister to provide a parking area for trucks delivery vehicles at 263 West Main Street. Opening the meeting at 9:08. Welcome, Mr. Bannister.
How you guys doing? Did you say
Hired.
trucks and delivery vehicles?
Yes. No, it says, yeah, truck/delivery vehicles is what it says.
Why does it say that?
I do not know.
Okay.
That should be amended too?
I mean, it's just that, yeah, it's just vehicles. I mean, I don't know why why it would ever say trucks and delivery vehicles.
Yeah, I believe at the time it was intended to be an Amazon parking lot, so I think that's why that
Never.
language got put in.
Never.
So it's just vehicles as a generic term.
Yes.
I believe the zoning bylaw allows for light commercial vehicles as accessory uses in the residential district. So I think,
Yeah, I think we covered that in the last
Right.
meeting. Light commercial is allowed.
All right, how do we want to start, Bill?
it's up to you, Dan. I think we have some new information. We have a revised plan that Jason, who's on the call here, provided. We could start with that, or we could start with where we left off at the last meeting in terms of what Peter's plan is for use of the property. Who his tenant might be and whether that's a permitted accessory use in the residential district.
Okay, they just pick up where we left off. I think that might be easiest. So the question is what is the use going to be?
Yeah, a parking lot.
So Bill, I don't have the zoning in front of me right now. Is parking lot a generic term that we can accept for use or for accessory use? We're looking for the major use first though, before you do the accessory.
Yeah,
Is
it's,
that correct?
I believe in the accessory section of the use table, it allows for parking of light commercial vehicles in all districts of the town, including the residential districts. So
Okay.
the requirement is that it be parking as an accessory use to a principal use.
So we're looking for the principal use.
Point of
Yeah,
clarification,
Yeah, car leasing.
Mr. Chairman, just a clarification, if I may. This property is, some of it is zone commercial and some residential, as I understood it. It's not entirely one or the other. Is that correct?
It's split.
Okay.
Well, there is a commercial lot which is in the commercial district. That is 263
Right.
Main Street. Behind it is the old driving range, which is predominantly in the residential 30 district.
Okay. So there's a duality here then. Thank you.
All right, so Bill, so the principal use is leasing of vehicles or car leasing. Do we have that in our zoning regulations?
The zoning bylaw doesn't list all possible businesses that might locate in the town.
Yeah.
But I think the general sense is that that's the kind of commercial use that's allowed in the commercial district.
If I may, one of the things that's resulted from this pandemic that we are currently experiencing is I've been out walking, which is kind of an amazing activity, and that you see things when you're walking that you don't really notice at 35 or 40 miles an hour. And one of the things that I've noted as I've walked down Lyons Road is, I'm not sure exactly where the line is drawn, but that area seems to be increasingly commercial. To wit, there is an office across from the courthouse, which now has 3 attorneys, apparently office space for another. And that's the adjoining structure. There are 2 look to be construction vehicles parked in the yard, and I believe have been there for some time. Then further along, there's a commercial vehicle regularly parked there for an electrical contractor. Then just down from there, abutting the Eisenhower Drive properties, if you would, is a landscaper with routinely trailers and rather large pickups parked there. I'm not sure, again, if those folks living in Eisenhower Drive thought they were moving into a strictly residential area, then I suspect that the commercial aspects have been encroaching upon them for some years. And that's not to mention the fact that there are these 2 apparently manufacturing concerns, I believe, in back of what is probably the Patriot gas station. And again, I think that probably infringes or comes very close to what might have been defined as residential. I guess what I'm saying is the waters are a little muddy in that area. Again, that's what happens when you walk.
Okay, so Bill Scanlon, we've had a primary use of car leasing, and you said that was allowed under commercial use.
Yes.
Is it allowed under residential? Do we need to have a residential use? I'm confused because we're like with a double district with the commercial and the residential.
Well, the only way the parking lot would be allowed in the residential district is if it's accessory to a commercial use,
Okay.
which would have to be in a commercial district or the business 15 district.
Okay.
So you need to be satisfied that, in fact, in order to authorize this use, that there is a valid primary use or principal use to which this lot is accessory.
Did you guys all get a chance to come up and take a look at how commercial looking this whole piece of property is?
I was out there earlier today, yep.
Bill, if I may, going back to the zoning bylaws, I'm referring to section 4.01.02 parking standards catalog. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. There are a number of activities identified, unit of measures identified in terms of square footage, for example, per commercial or retail establishment with parking space standards. Is this specific to the town as a whole, or is this specific to specific zoning areas?
Those standards apply to parking lots throughout the town.
Okay. One of the things that I think is missing here, and I'm not finding fault with the zoning board, is that there's no reference to new car dealerships, if you will. And I know that's a permitted use in other aspects of the zoning bylaws, but it's not referenced here. It seems to me that there should be reference to that, and that pretty much, I think, better approximates what Peter's asking for than anything else that is listed here.
Could I speak on that?
Sure.
I think the parking catalog is more for public parking spaces for different types of building uses. That's why it's going through, hotels, commercial offices, retail. It's all more geared towards, public space needs versus a car dealership, which is just cars standing still. So I think that's why they don't have a certain reference on how many spaces would be required for a car dealership. But to go even further, I mean, this isn't a car dealership.
True.
Either.
It's neither fish nor fowl as far as that's concerned. It's not covered here specifically, and you're right, it's not a car dealership. The only thing I'm using that is an approximation of what we're talking about. And I think it's something that helps us visualize the number of spaces that we're trying to give consideration to here. So that's the only reason I'm bringing that up. And this is specific in terms of commercial office. Per 1,000 square feet gross floor area, you get 3.3 parking spaces. So there is at least some guidance in terms of the categories that are covered. Unfortunately, the category that we're dealing with, or the issue that we're dealing with, is not part of that categorization.
Rich, I'm also on the zoning board, and like Jason just said, them parking requirements are geared towards specific businesses, specific uses. And there isn't anything as far as if I wanted to open a car dealership, you know, you're only limited to so many vehicles. There's bylaws limiting that.
I understand. I think that might be something that might be worth consideration in the future.
There's a lot of
It's
lacking.
an aside. It doesn't pertain to this issue specifically.
There's a lot of lacking in the zoning bylaws that makes Nelson's job very difficult because there's a lot of vague areas that, unfortunately, you know, a lot of it needs to be rewritten and re-looked at.
Admittedly.
And the other issue that has come up is the board has requested a traffic study. And Peter feels that would be unnecessary given the sort of the low trip generation that he's suggesting would occur from a leased parking area. So I think he wanted the board to address that question, whether you still want a traffic study to go forward, in which case he would proceed with that, or whether you think that it wouldn't be necessary and therefore would not require it. So I think the board should kind of address whether a traffic study should occur for this property.
Yeah, I made that request a number of meetings ago whenever I thought that there was a possibility there would be delivery vans on the site. Like there's an large number of vehicles there. If it was going to be delivery of any sort, that traffic study would definitely be necessary. Knowing now that it's getting more into it is more in the direction of leasing, I'm thinking that it's not a steadfast requirement to do a traffic study. Matter of fact, it might be just step 2. What do other members of the board think?
Yeah, I would agree with Dan. I mean, I think it's an unnecessary request and an unnecessary cost for the applicant.
Richard?
I would agree, Mr. Chairman. The only thing that I would note is that, as I understood at the last meeting, Peter had not had at that time an actual customer. We were still out there looking for someone to occupy this space or someone who he could contract with to provide the space. I don't know if that's changed.
Lou, how do you feel about the traffic study?
I feel the same way as you and Bill. Originally, Mr. Burlingame's concern was there wasn't a specific use at the time, that Mr. Bannister didn't identify a specific use. So there was some confusion, and that's why we wanted the traffic study. If we have now a specific use and that's on the application, then I'm okay with no traffic study.
Steve?
Yeah, no, I'm okay with the no traffic study. However, I did want to mention, Dan, you also, you talked about I can never remember the name of this, but it had to do with the lights, the lights that were going to be erected in the parking lot.
Illumination levels.
So, yeah.
It was like a biometric study or some weird.
Photometric, yep.
That's it, photometric study. I'd still like to see the photometric study done. But as far as the traffic study, I would concur with everybody else. Now that we have a definitive use from Peter as to it being leasing, I think that yeah, I'm fine with nixing the traffic study requirement, but I still want to support Dan's recommendation on the photometric study, unless you feel that's no longer necessary.
No, I think when we first opened this up, Bill had mentioned that there was a revision in the plan that was going to be presented, and then that I'd like to see that to find out and then ask about the photometric, if Mr. Bennett should be okay with providing a photometric for the site.
Jason, do you want to describe the lighting that you're proposing now?
Yeah, so I guess, Pete doesn't feel that he needs to light a major portion of the parking lot, towards a residential area. I wish there was a way we could kind of look at the plan. But we basically just proposed lights in the business zoned area.
You talking pole lighting?
Yes.
And how high will the poles be?
Probably like 13 feet.
13, okay.
And, you know, again, we don't have a problem having a electrical, you know, lighting company or electrical engineering company do the photometrics plan. It's just a lot of times I found that, you know, you hire these companies to do it and then the contractor doesn't end up using them. So they kind of get a bad, you know, they kind of get annoyed doing things super early. So I think I just thought that we should try and get through kind of the use and make sure that this is going to be, you know, acceptable. And if we can get by that, then we can get into more of the technical aspects of the plan, like with the drainage and things like that. And then we can, you know, we can hire an electrical company to do the photometrics at that time. But again, Peter didn't think that we needed to really light up too much the back portion of the parking lot, which you can see on the revised plan. I only showed lighting around the business area. And we did add a loading zone. So that loading zone also would be lit up.
So from big picture, from what I'm hearing, if only the commercial area is lit up, if the poles are only 13 feet high, if they're arranged properly and the foot candle level isn't too high, the residents in the area should be more or less protected from all kinds of glare from the lot itself. That sounds generally acceptable for me.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Richard.
Again, referring to the town bylaws, which I guess don't have any federal standing, but at least are local guidelines. General regulation under section number 4, all open space, off-street parking areas for more than 4 cars located within or adjacent to a residential district of use shall be visually screened from all adjoining lots, either zoned or in use for residential purposes by a barrier of vegetation, metal or wood between 4 to 6 feet in height. Said barrier must be maintained in a reasonable manner. I think as one of the things that we heard earlier is the abutters apparently have no issues with this project. I would ask that Mr. Bannister comply with that general regulation in terms of creating a barrier so that any future abutters did not have issue with what he's presenting to the board this evening.
I think there's one there, isn't there, Peter?
I mean, it's pretty.
There's a barrier
grown.
of sorts, but I don't, it's not, it's kind of what nature has provided, shall we say, as opposed to something that might be more inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the first meeting, I would put I'd put trees on both sides of the property lines, just in case if I sold the property, if someone cuts it.
And this regulation does say barrier of vegetation, metal or wood. So there's the option of vegetation, obviously.
I mean, I love trees, so I have no problem with that.
Through the chair,
No cell towers, thank you.
could I speak on the plan again? Yep. So we did on the revised plan, we did add a row of arborvitae running along the southerly boundary. About, I forget exactly, I want to say around 300 feet or so, which covers those couple or 3 abutters that actually do abut the field area. And also to comply with the bylaw, we did add a 6-foot fence. So, I mean, if the board would be okay with one or the other, I think Peter would be happier only having to provide one. But if the bylaw does state that you need both, we did show both on there. I don't know if you've seen the GIS overlay, you know, the aerial photos, you can see that there's only a couple houses that really have visual sight of this area.
I remember that from the last meeting. Yeah.
I think it's, as I read it, it's an option here in terms of barrier of vegetation, metal or wood between 4 to 6 feet in height. So I guess it's your option in terms of the vegetation, which would obviously be more of a natural appearance than to put up some kind of a fence, if you would.
And arborvitaes just get bigger and thicker and taller as the years go on. So
it can help to feed the deer as well.
Yeah, it doesn't sound to me. It doesn't sound to me like Mr. Bannister would have a problem with down the road if a butter was having an issue, I'm sure he'd be willing to work with in a butter on adding more trees down the road if they request it.
Absolutely. I do anything to keep the neighbors happy. When Lois asked me to separate the two properties with a fence, my 1 week off I spent putting a fence up, and I picked up the cost. I didn't ask for a dime. I just did it. I'm easy.
So I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage here because I haven't seen the revised plan. How many parking spots are we showing now?
I believe there's 496.
Oh, decreased.
I haven't, at Jason's request, I didn't send it over to Grace for a second peer review of the project because we wanted to see how the board was going to handle this application. So if you like, we could send it to Grace for the second peer review of this plan. We get the opinion from Jeff as to the drainage impacts, and we could even ask him to look at the lighting as well.
I just have one general question. What is the size of the lot total? And what portion of that, either percentage or acreage, whatever, is residentially zoned?
You want me to answer it?
Yeah,
I don't have the actual
Yeah,
acreage.
I think it's 16 acres total.
Yep.
And probably, I think the front section is probably about 5 acres. That's on the commercial side.
So roughly a third is commercial.
I would say.
I would say roughly.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, if we don't have exact numbers, that's fine. I'm just trying to look for kind of a ballpark.
It looks like about half of the driving range is being occupied by the parking area and drainage detention basin. Is that about right, Jason?
Yes. Yep.
So I don't know if I just, for the board, my opinion is, big picture is I don't have any problems with this at all. My concern, and I'm not saying this is a huge, well, I'm babbling, is just the number of spots of 496. That just kind of seems like it's a huge number, especially being next to a residential zone. But as Richard pointed out earlier, we have a lot of encroaching commercial in the area on Lyons Road and another bunch of areas. What's the opinion of the rest of the board?
How much of an increase is that from the last number we had?
It's a decrease.
It's actually a decrease.
It's less.
Yeah,
Oh, was it?
It was about 540, but we got rid of a few spaces for a loading area, and then we also trimmed back a few spaces just for a little bit more of a turning area for the, if there was a car carrying vehicle that were to loop around.
Sure. Okay.
And we also trimmed off the whole right side, which was about 35 spaces as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Bill, Lou, any comments about size or number of spots?
I mean, it just seems like an astronomical amount of spots, but I'm okay with it.
Bill?
I'm fine. And back to the lighting for a second. I think if he's proposing just to do the lighting in the commercial building area, I don't see the need for him to do a study on the lighting unless down the road he thinks he may need to add lighting in the parking area, which he doesn't sound like he's doing. So I don't think the light study would really be necessary unless lights are added in that area down the road. Does that make sense?
We could certainly add a condition to that effect in the decision if that was your preference.
Yeah,
And come back.
I don't see requesting a light study right now making sense if he's only proposing it in the commercial area.
So, Bill, what happens if, just worst case scenario, 10 years from now, that turns from car leasing into delivery vans? Is that a Nelson question?
Well, he'd probably be out of compliance with the zoning bylaw then, unless it was, again, accessory to a principal use.
Okay.
So it's really a question of whether it's a standalone parking lot or not.
I mean,
It would,
I think we determined that if I was gonna change the use, I'd have to come back in front of the board.
Special
Just
permit.
refreshing the memory. We've been on this phone call already for 2.5 hours. I was tired an hour and a half ago.
it would be a change of use, so it would require the zoning officer to make that determination. And if he couldn't, he would refer it to the zoning board,
Planning board.
planning board, sorry. I'm tired too.
So Bill Scanlon, correct me if I'm wrong, right now, in theory, we could take a vote to approve a major site plan review? Or are we just given like an initial recommendation so we actually see plans and make the recommendation or make the vote?
Well, I would prefer that the plan, again, go through a second peer review before you vote to approve. I think everybody's getting a sense that the board is in favor, or at least supports the proposed use of the property, which I think, is what Peter was looking for, to get a sense of the board.
Yep.
So that at this point, then it probably makes sense to continue to have the engineering peer review completed, so that we can then identify any mitigation that might be required.
And I was jumping ahead. I mean, obviously the planning board itself has to look at the plans. I mean, I haven't seen them yet either. So, then I don't think there's any vote recall. I mean, we've heard the comments of the planning board. I think that in general, guys, correct if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak for everybody. In general, we seem to be in favor of this and the direction it's going.
You're suggesting, Mr. Chairman, we don't need a motion or a vote?
No, I don't think there's any formal vote needed. I think as Bill Scanlon pointed out, we need to have the plans submitted, have them accepted, or have them submitted.
Okay.
Have them sent out for peer review. Give us all a chance to look at them and once again speak most likely to next or whenever we have the comments back from our engineer. At that point in time, we can talk about the actual vote for major site plan review. But I think that, correct me if I'm wrong again, Mr. Bennett is looking for more or less a soft thumbs up that the direction he's going looks good. We don't see any major hurdles.
Mr. Chairman, indicating a thumbs up on this end.
Steve?
Yeah, I think our major sticking point last time we talked about this was that we had a clear idea of exactly what business was going to be going in there and what business he wanted to conduct, and that's what we requested, and I'm satisfied.
Okay, I got a thumbs up from Lou. Bill?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
So Jason, will you forward a full-size plan up to Jeff?
Yes.
And do you have any new drainage calcs to go with that?
No, nothing's changed as far as the drainage.
Okay, fine. Then just
So has he reviewed this already once or no? I haven't seen anything.
I don't recall. I thought he did, but maybe.
I don't think I think he was waiting on us.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So
then send him up a full set of whatever you've got.
Okay.
Bill, what's the, I know we're kind of going day by day, but what's going to be the procedure for plan review as far as us seeing them?
Well, we can always do what we did today. Carol can make copies and leave them in the police lobby for you.
Okay.
I try to send you the digital copies, but sometimes, it's hard to read those. So, Jason, maybe if you would make 5, maybe 6 large-scale plans for the board that they could pick up.
Okay. But you want me to do that, or?
Yes, yes, if you could.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just, is there a box outside the town hall to drop them in?
Carol, there is, right? Can you unmute, Carol?
Hi.
Hi, is there a box in town?
There's it's a green, I believe it's a green mailbox in the police lobby on the right-hand side. You can drop everything in there.
Okay.
It gets picked up every
We'll pass them out
day.
to the board.
All right, we good?
I think so.
All right. Long meeting. Thanks for your patience, Jason. Peter,
All right.
appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night.
Yep.
Thank you,
Right.
guys.
All right.
All right, what's the quickest way to get out of this?
Well, first of all, I think somebody has to make a motion to adjourn, right?
Well, we have a couple of other things.
Okay.
I did send you
Ooh.
the Lions Estates draft decision. Sounds like it's probably too late to really go over that tonight, but I mean, unless you want to, we could. I'd be happy to take any comments, or if you want to get back to me with comments, I could have a revision for the next meeting.
The
Is
only
there
two
anything
comments
pressing
I
in the
had,
remaining agenda items?
Excuse me?
Anything that needs to be acted upon this evening? In the
Well,
remaining items on the agenda?
the decision, right, for Lions Estates is not really a hearing, it's just a administrative matter for you to review and approve.
All right, Rich, you want to hurry all of a sudden?
No, I want to get out of town before you guys figure out how much of your time I've taken already.
So I suggest, Dan, maybe it's too late to go over that tonight. Maybe we could take that up at the next meeting.
has everybody had a chance to review them yet or not?
Honest answer, no.
I tried, I guess somewhere, were those were emailed to us, Bill?
Yes, I think I did it Monday. I was hoping to get it out sooner, but
All
it
right.
ended
I
up
think I
being more
got
work than I
myself
thought.
sidetracked by two of the earlier agenda items to the point
Okay.
that I may have overlooked that. I'll check my emails again.
So then I think everybody should read it, Dan, before we vote to
Okay,
approve it.
so
Okay.
I got a couple comments, Bill, but I'll leave them until we all go over everything, all right?
Okay, sure.
Okay. I didn't see any minutes for us to approve. Did I miss those from the last meeting?
Did you send them out, Carol?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Okay, so we can table that as well.
Makes that easy.
Yeah. No A&R plans.
Bill Scanlon, is this okay with you with the table all the discussions under Delta, the different subdivisions?
Yeah, the only thing I would mention is that the Eisenhower Drive work is on hold now because of the coronavirus. That was
Okay.
scheduled for last week, and the crew isn't doing anything but emergency work right now.
Understand.
And I also did ask, I know at the last meeting you asked me to see if town council would weigh in on what the planning board can do to help expedite completion of subdivisions. So that request was made to Copeland and Page, but I don't have an answer on that yet. So I should have that for the next meeting.
Okay. Any comments from any of the planning board members?
No, I think this was actually quite a success considering it was our first, run at a virtual planning board meeting. And Dan, I want to thank you for doing an excellent job as chair.
Yes.
I'm a little frustrated. I couldn't get the files up on screen, so it would have made it a lot easier for you to see what they were talking about. I'll work on that for the next meeting.
I would like to echo Steve's comments. I think, given that I obviously had some issues early on, but I think I passed that now. Given that this is still fairly new to all of us, Bill, I think you're beating yourself up needlessly. You did a pretty good job, and thank you for kind of helping to put all of this together. And again, kudos to the chairman for having managed something that I don't think he ever planned on or thought of in the past. Thank you.
Yeah, Bill, I've got a project going in Milford right now, and the town hall is shut down, and we're trying to go through the permitting process, and it's been terrible. Conservation Commission isn't meeting. There's some other things going on, and we had an internal meeting. And I was talked about some of the things that he's doing, and they were kind of a little bit surprised. So a big thank you to you for pushing this.
Sure.
And making sure the town of Dudley is still working. I'm sure that not only the applicants, but also the board appreciates it. I also wanted to say a quick thank you to the board. In my career, I get in front of planning boards, conservation commissions, et cetera, and it's always kind of a pet peeve when you meet 6 new people and they have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. They have to go through all the documents in front of you. And with Carol's help, we've been able to, Carol and Bill, they've been able to get documents to us. You guys are reviewing them. Richard, you can kind of tease about the time you took up of us tonight, but you put a lot of effort and a lot of time into the research and all this, and that's appreciated. That makes the rest of our decisions and just decision processes go a lot smoother. So, thank you to the whole entire board for their commitment, motivation, and dedication. And if we don't have anything else, you guys just want to adjourn, or?
Just one question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Under other business, approval of consultant vouchers, payment of bills. Are we clear in terms of how that, will we go forward with that, or do we have anything before us this evening?
Carol, do you have anything? Any bills?
I believe there was one that I was waiting for information from the Telegram, but that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. In that case, I would make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Second.
just one
Yep.
thing, I think, Bill, were you going to request that the planning board give you authorization to sign?
Right.
Or is it not needed at this point?
We could, well, it's part of the decision, so I think that could be part of the motion for approving the decision
Okay,
to authorize me to sign it. But, Richard had asked the question, how do we sign plans with this state of emergency? So my suggestion after, looking around and seeing what was recommended by town council was that you would authorize me to sign on your behalf. And that would be part of the motion to approve the decision.
Good. Mr. Chairman, I move the question.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second to adjourn. I guess I got to do a roll vote, right, Steve?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
All right, and Lou?
Aye.
And that's an aye for myself as well. Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.
Next time.
Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
gentlemen. Stay safe. Be healthy.